In Mark 11:24, Jesus says to his disciples, "Therefore I tell you, whatever you ask for in prayer, believe that you have received it, and it will be yours." How powerful is that? Jesus literally told his disciples, and through them us, that when we pray, all we have to do is believe that whatever we ask for is already ours, and God's going to give it to us. Sounds simple, right? But it isn't. America is filled with watered-down Christians who claim to follow Jesus, but don't show it in their actions. Unfortunately, even those Christians that really do love Christ and strive to be like him find it hard to overcome prayer as an obstacle. However, I don't believe prayer is an obstacle. I think it's the believing that we've already received that's the hardest part of praying. One of the most popular reasons that people, even Christians, stop praying is because they don't think prayer is effective. Even though we may see the promise of Jesus in words, prayer left unanswered are super discouraging. Why do we hear of other people's prayers being responded to affirmatively while we pray our hearts out and don't get what we asked for? The answer comes in the form of a question. Do we have faith? Last year, my family and I took a trip up to Oregon to see the solar eclipse, and on the way up from Los Gatos, we stopped in Redding. In our hotel room was a Bethel Church magazine, and an article about prayer rooms caught my eye. I asked my dad what they were, and he told me how people with the spiritual gifts of healing and faith would pray over others, and miraculous healings would happen. I had seriously bad eczema at the time on my legs, and seriously horrendous eczema on my arms. So I asked my dad if we could go to these healing rooms in the morning. He said yes, of course, because he wanted me to have the experience of possibly witnessing miracles before my own eyes. I don't think he expected to see what he saw. Long story short, an elderly couple came to pray over me. They put their hands on me, and my dad put his hands on my shoulders, and we all prayed intensely. But by the end of the prayer, my arms were still red and itchy. It was the epitome of discouragement. I thought that God would work through those people. I knew that he would. So why hadn't he healed my skin? This is the issue that many Christians today face when they pray. For many, prayer is a ritual, going through the motions again and again, and at meals, maybe before bed. When we ritualize prayer with the right intentions, it's good for our faith and our relationship with Christ. But when we just say or think our prayers over and over without comprehending the deep meaning behind our words, God, thanks for the food, God, thanks for this day, help us have a good sleep, the prayers become habitual rather than spiritual. When prayers become habitual, back of our mind thoughts, we lose the need to have faith. Why must we have faith? To solely think. But our prayers aren't just thoughts. Our prayers are characterized by us, God's children, opening the deepest parts of our hearts and letting him hear our cries. Prayer is one of those ways to connect to Jesus. With this in mind, it seems obvious that we need to take prayer seriously and have faith that God listens to every single word that we utter to him. Despite the sadness that I felt while my dad drove down the hill away from Bethel, I resolved to continue praying. I had recently read a book by David Wilkerson, The Cross and the Switchblade, which contained many amazing stories of the spiritual gifts and their outcomes. I was so attracted to that. I needed it to be my reality, so I kept on praying. I knew the promises of Jesus regarding prayer, and I was willing to wait. So I prayed, God, I know you're there, and I know you hear me. So I'm going to exploit my position as your child. Show me that you hear me and give me something that I need. Bring your healing upon me and show me that you listen to your sons and your daughters. 3 days later, I hopped out of bed. Halfway through my morning, I felt a little itch on my arm and I reached to scratch it, but my skin was smooth. All of my eczema on my arms and my legs was healed. The couple at Bethel, my dad and I, all prayed seriously with intense belief and faith that Jesus would work through our prayers, and he did. James chapter 2 talks about how faith and works are both crucial aspects of prayer. When we see that in the concept of prayer, this is how we see it in the concept of prayer. We pray, the work of allowing God to enter us and hear us, and our faith is the other part, that God will provide an answer to our prayers. This is equally important in the process. If every person who professed to be a Christian, every person who truly desired Jesus, if one single person with a faith the size of a mustard seed our world would be so much better to live in. People would be cured of diseases on the spot. God would speak to us so loudly. More people would be filled with God's Spirit and would inevitably be happier, better people. Don't we want that? Don't we want our world to be filled with a bunch of people who want to be like Christ? Of course we do. So I challenge you to remember that praying is not just our thoughts inside us, our brain talking to itself. It's direct communication with God. And when we understand that God commands us to ask and we shall receive, and have faith that his messages are true, we will be inspired to pray more often and more powerfully, and that will lead to the miraculous result of prayer that we are promised.